Welcome. We're going to begin the evening with some quiet sitting. Then we're going to revisit the last part 4 of our conversation from last week on the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And then it's a really good segue to carry that right into the conversation about what Buddhists mean when they talk about emptiness and how that can tie into and be experienced through something called an analytical meditation technique. So that's what we're going to do. I tried to keep it simple tonight so that we don't run out of time. I'm blaming you, so that I don't run out of time, and we'll see how it goes. So we'll start with simple shamatha meditation, which, as you may recall, is a simple attentive focus on one thing. And ideally, it's the breath, which is first foundation of mindfulness, is mindfulness of body, and particularly the body in the body, which is animated and made possible by the breath, sponsored by the breath. So let's do 12 minutes. Quiet sitting. I may pipe in here and there for some encouragement or some redirect if I sense that that's useful, or I may just be quiet the whole time. So find a comfortable seat and a tall spine, and feel supported by the ground and by the energy of the space around you and by the presence of each other. Notice your next inhale. Follow it to its exhale. And continue in that way. When you notice distractions, simply notice and return. Begin again with the breath. Take in the ambient reality of your environment, all of the sounds and vibrations that are present. Not asking anything to change and not layering on a story about anything that you're experiencing. So we are not subtracting and we are not adding. Just staying with what is and re-anchoring to the breath. Returning again and again to the presence of breath, perhaps watching it and experiencing it entering the body, and perhaps locating it in the body where it feels most present, lingering there at the top of each inhale. Touching lightly and releasing. Imagining that you have inner controls of volume. Turn the volume up on the breath so it's at the forefront of your experience, and turn the volume down on everything else. Not off. We're not rejecting anything or pushing it away, just turning it down. So we turn up the breath. If you get anxious or impatient or sluggish or tired, just name that. Allow it. Return to the breath. Breath is in charge, and as if it gives permission to everything else to exist in this moment as it is. Simply return to the next inhale. About 2 more minutes. Take 3 more long streaming breaths. Inhale and exhale 1, 2 more. And gently bring yourself back to the shared space. And one of the air, for those of you in Zoom, one of the air units kicked on just about 2 minutes ago, and I fought every urge I had to jump up and turn it off. And why didn't I do that? Why did I fight the urge and not jump up? Anyone? Yeah, because I had just said nothing added, nothing subtracted. Don't try to control the internet. So it was like it was a tangible lesson. It was a teaching moment for all of us, a practice moment as well, to say like, yeah, okay, it's sound. There's all kinds of sound all the time. If if the goal was to learn how to meditate and practice in pristine environments, then what would be the point? Right? So, but so I can hear myself talk. I am going to go and see if I can adjust this down. Okay. So much better. All right. I want to revisit the tail end of our talk last week, but in order to do that, I'll give a quick recap. So last week, we spent the time talking about the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and this is from foundational Buddhism, from the Pali Canon, the earliest set of teachings from the Buddha when he first had his awakening experience and taught about it to whoever was around who would listen. And the 4 foundations of mindfulness are mindfulness of body, so the physical form of ourselves and of each other, so the body inside and the body's outside, internal and external, um, uh, signified primarily by the breath. And mindfulness of feeling, and in particular sensation, so that the tactile experience of the body meeting through the senses, and we're going to talk about that a lot more tonight, in fact, sensory experience. And then how does that feel? Is it pleasant? Is it unpleasant? Is it neutral? You could further quantify that into like, is it hot or cold? Is it heavy or light? Is it spacious or contracted? Is it fluid or stagnant? But in particular, the question is, and only is it pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? And that's how we stay with the sensation and not add the story to it. And the story includes the emotions around it, and the story includes opinions about it. Third one is mindfulness of mind, and that's when we are dealing with the stories and the opinions, the perceptions, the naming, the characterizing, the conceptualizing. And when we find ourselves doing that, we name it as such. Oh, thinking is happening, noted. Yes, I heard myself thinking, and now I'm going to return to the breath or to the sensation. And finally, mindfulness of Dharma, which is the 4th one, which is the one that's the most elusive to grasp and certainly to explain. When we're regarding mindfulness of Dharma, we're regarding the phenomena of consciousness and the phenomena of wisdom around that consciousness. So often I will interpret mindfulness of Dharma as mindfulness of wisdom, because it's taking all of the experience that happens in the world and it's acknowledging the fundamental truth of all of it. And the Buddha characterized that fundamental truth in lots of different ways. But the way, for our purposes here, in their most simple form, the way to characterize them are that they are that they can invoke suffering when we attach to them, that they are impermanent, and that there is no such thing as a separate self. And those are known as the 3 marks of existence. And so when we are contemplating mindfulness of the Dharma or mindfulness of the wisdom, we are noticing whatever phenomena is making itself known in the moment in our mind space or in our visual field or our oral hearing field or any sense field, dreams, emotions, concerns, memories, all of those things. And then we're saying, hello, I see you. I know you. You're not different than me, but you're also not definitive of me. And I will suffer if I give you too much weight. You are going to go away. Remember, the you I'm talking to is the phenomena that's arising, the thought, the feeling, the experience, all of it. And did I say the 3 already? Yeah, you're going to go away. You're not permanent. You're not me. I'm not you, but we're also not each other. And if I attach to the idea that you're permanent or that you are me or that you are not me, attachment and aversion, I will suffer. That's the real nut of the wisdom in those 3 things. And I remember you were there, Andrea. It was a workshop with Sarah Powers at the place in DC. It was like 2004, maybe. And she said those 3 things, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. And I had no idea about Buddhism. I had no meditation practice. I was all about the asana. I didn't know anything from anything, but those 3 things really resonated. And I have that notebook still, and I have those and I spelled it out in Sanskrit. I didn't know a thing about a thing, but I knew that this made sense. So questions? Okay. Should we move along? Is that all on? Yeah. Practical question. Uh-huh.
How often are you advised to practice this, what you just described?
So the question, how often is it advisable for anyone to practice mindfulness of Dharma or of wisdom? Every minute you are alive and thinking. In my opinion. And why would I say that?
Because you suffer less.
As you said, Maria. Yeah. I mean, can you think of, and I test this for myself sometimes, can you think of a situation where that wouldn't come in handy? I mean, and it's an honest, genuine question. It's not rhetorical. I mean, I can't, and I have tried. The Buddha said, do not take anything I ever teach by my word. Test it for yourself. We're going to talk about this tonight. In fact, it's called the 4 reliances. And one of them is don't rely on the word. Don't rely on the letter of the law, rely on the spirit of the law. Don't take anybody's word for anything. Okay, that I could characterize differently, but in terms of wisdom teachings, I think that is a fair and accurate, or I think it's good advice. I think it holds. So yeah, I can't think of a situation where it wouldn't apply and where it wouldn't reduce my suffering, because it softens it frays the binding of attachment.
Annie, could you give us a practical examples, Katha, of the Dharma method? I'm calling it the Dharma method of mindfulness, but I'm paraphrasing, but
Sure.
a real life example of how it could be used in a real life situation. I think I can conceptualize that, but I'd love to see you give us an example.
Yeah, so I love the questions in that vein, because I don't have to think back very far. I just think, okay, what happened today? Right? What was one tough thing for me that happened? And here's one tough thing. And this is a very physical thing, actually. It was a very physical experience. I know I like to characterize a lot of these teachings in terms of relationship and emotions and personal traumas and inner struggles, but this was a very physical thing where I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. So I think I mentioned that I've been working out with a trainer, which is just laughing at me, it is hilarious if you know me well. I'm 50. Am I 58? I think I'm 58 years old. Have never done this in my life ever, ever. Have never lifted a weight. Have never been on a machine. You know those machines? So I had my workout today with Orlando James in the lower level of Sun and Moon's Arlington studio. He's terrific if you want a trainer. And he worked me pretty hard, because he said, "Were you sore last week?" I was like, "No, I wasn't." I should have said I was, because he made it harder. And then my plan was to leave there and go straight to Whole Foods and do grocery shopping, because Baxter Bell is coming this weekend and we're hosting him. And you know, when you have people in your home, you have to have food for them. So I'm halfway to Whole Foods and I'm like all of a sudden in this physical panic. I was either dehydrated or having a blood sugar crash, or both, but I was nauseous and shaky and and weak. And I was like, I don't have time to go home and then go back to Whole Foods. So I just went there and I immediately went to like the juice section. I got a pressed juice. Was that right, Maria? It worked. So spoiler alert. So I got the juice and then I had to pay for it in order to go upstairs to sit down and drink it, because I had to sit down. And I didn't want to sit down on the floor in the grocery store. So I like went went upstairs and I sat down and I drank it. And it took like a good 15 minutes for me to feel normal again. So what was I doing in my head? I was not panicking. I was not cursing Orlando. I was not beating myself up for probably not eating or drinking enough prior to the thing. I just was doing what I had to do, keeping my head straight, as straight as I could, because it gets you a little wonky, right? And breathing and thinking to myself, okay, this is going to pass. And this is not a statement about me or Orlando for that matter, or anyone at Whole Foods or anything. Nothing about nothing. It's just a moment in time. And I was noticing the sensation, mindfulness of feeling. It was unpleasant. I was noticing my breath. I was noticing my thoughts, like wanting to make up a story to blame somebody or to castigate myself. Nope, just that's a thought. And mindfulness of the Dharma, the wisdom of it all. It's just a speck in time. No big thing, not a thing. So, maybe that's a silly example, but it's, if you think now back to like, what's the most challenging thing that happened for you today, then you can put it through that filter and see if it might have helped. And if you were present enough and clear enough to notice some of those things that will attenuate a hard circumstance. Kath, I don't know if that was what you were looking for, but
No, that's wonderful. It's very it's practical, and it's not
yeah,
just as you said in the beginning, it's not sitting still and listening to your breath and thinking of all the lists of things. It's taking all of that together, and it's almost
right.
do it enough, it becomes like any practice, it becomes instinctive, I guess. But it's great. No, it's great. It's
Yeah.
hard
Yeah.
sometimes. It's hard on
Yeah.
the emotion. It's very hard.
Yeah.
Would you say that it's more a habit at the beginning,
Um,
and then it just becomes automatic, like you said?
so at what point so Maria's asking is at what point is it habitual or instinctive or intuitive or what? I don't know, but all I can say to that is the more you practice, the more it's there. It just becomes like part of the fabric. I don't think I'm there yet. So I don't really know. Because I promise there are plenty of times when I lose my shit. Plenty. Just ask Amir. He's the one who sees it the most. Because it's the people closest to you who suffer in your own hands. I'm only speaking for myself. My therapist said to me once, no, 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 that's the person you have to be the nicest to. I was like, right.
You have to control your mind. For me, I think it's the point.
It's mind training. Absolutely.
You can control the mind with breathing,
Yes.
because you forget or you stop to go.
Yeah. So thoughts can be they do tricks on us. They play games on us, but the breath doesn't. Unless you're having an allergic reaction and you can't breathe. Then it's all up to the mind. Yeah.
Recognize the emotion,
Mhm.
accepting them, and then letting them go.
Yeah. Um, I wrote in my notes again, don't add and don't subtract. Um, okay. Think here's a good story. This was the story that I wrote the page number down. It's from this book by Thich Nhat Hanh, Understanding Our Mind. And but I wrote the page number wrong. So I was gonna read it to you, but I'm just gonna share it by memory. And it might not be exactly the way he wrote it, but Understanding Our Mind. The story is that so it still exists. He's no longer with us on the earthly plane, but Plum Village in France is his huge retreat center. And he tells a story about a farmer who lived near the center. And he used to see this farmer all the time when they were first building Plum Village. And the farmer always had this kind of grim look on his face, and Thich Nhat Hanh would wave as he rode by, and the farmer didn't respond. And so Thich Nhat Hanh assumed that this farmer was angry that these crazy meditating people were setting up shop in his neighborhood. And so he assumed that the farmer didn't like him and didn't want him there, but he kept on waving. And then one time he's driving by and there's the farmer in his truck. He had his hands on the steering wheel and he lifted a finger like that when Thich Nhat Hanh drove by. He's like, oh, maybe he's starting to accept us. And then a week later, it was like the hand went up. And then after a little more time, there was an actual wave. And then eventually they met. And what Thich Nhat Hanh learned was that the farmer had been in a terrible accident and he couldn't raise his arms. And that's why he wasn't waving. And that's why he wasn't smiling, because he's in pain. But he healed gradually and was able to be neighborly at that point and could welcome Thich Nhat Hanh and his followers and students and the staff there. And so it's such a great reminder about this idea of don't add and don't subtract. We make these assumptions all the time about each other, and we have clue what's going on. We have no clue about people's stories and their struggles and their histories and their desires and their needs and their hopes and their dreams, and certainly not their hearts. You know, we walk around with these invisible, I'm talking about the metaphorical heart, but this invisible, tender, vulnerable, just wanting love part of ourselves that nobody can possibly see. And what if we made up a story? What if we assumed that about each other and not all the other stuff?
We do that. We tell ourselves stories to sort of assuage the ego, assuage that we're being rejected.
Oh yeah,
Receiving,
yeah.
so that we feel better about ourselves, going, oh, what a pain in the butt, you know, or whatever.
I think totally. Did you all hear that about Maria's? Okay, so Maria's theory about why we make up these stories, it assuages the ego. It makes us feel better about ourselves. It, like, you know, it will either it assigns blame or excuses our own behaviors or whatever, all kinds of reasons. Yes. And it absolutely is protecting, preserving the ego. And remember, the third mark of existence is there's no self. There is no such thing. So we're protecting something that doesn't exist. Okay. There are a couple of other really good little teaching tales to share, but I want to get to our topic for tonight because it's juicy stuff. And it's a little bit heady at first. So stick with it. I promise it too can be very useful. So in Buddhist thought and in yogic thought, the granddaddy, the king of all suffering, the absolute OG cause of all suffering is ignorance. And by ignorance, we don't mean a lack of education. We mean an inability to see the truth. And the only path to understanding the truth is to pierce our illusions about things and people and each other. And when we pierce those illusions, we're piercing this armor that creates a sense of a separation. It's like taking a pin to a balloon. And it's just, there's nothing there. It shrivels. And so this practice of diligent mind training, which is going to be the topic for, I think, in 2 weeks, in fact, a whole nother set of teachings around ways to do this mind training. We find that so much of what we ascribe and give weight to and import around is empty. And so emptiness is the continuation the later formulation of the concept of no self. So in its original form, the three marks of existence, suffering when we attach to our illusions, and impermanence, and no self. This is from the earliest teachings of foundational Buddhism. In the later reformulations of the Mahayana, which is known as the second turning, the scholars and practitioners and monks returned to the idea of no self and developed it further into this idea of emptiness. And along with emptiness, it's hand in hand with compassion. So what does that mean? What does that look like? Emptiness is, I have a colleague who actually prefers the word fullness, because it doesn't mean that there's nothing there. It means there's more there than we can see. It means that what's not there is the definitive outline of any person or anything. It means that when I look at this thing that I'm holding in my hand, that I see how much more there is to it than the plastic. And it's easy to understand that because we know how much a smartphone can do. Like, this is my connection to the world. And so in and of itself, this item is empty of inherent existence. What would be the point of me carrying around this, how many pounds? 2 pounds? 20 pounds? No, it's I'm lifting weights now, so it feels lighter. What would be the point of me carrying around this piece of plastic that's worthless as a piece of plastic? Because physically, that's what it is. But it is so much, it is empty of a simple singular thing. I am empty of a simple singular thing, because when my kids look at me, they see mom. When my brothers look at me, they see sister. When my dog looks at me, he sees best friend and provider of all food and love and walkies and belly rubs, right? So, and when the person at Whole Foods who gets annoyed because I'm walking slow because I can barely walk sees me as an obstacle to her getting through the line quicker, right? I am all those things and so many more. And so are we all each other. So it's freedom. So emptiness is fullness. It's freedom from elaborations on one thing. It's the reference points and the blockages that we construct about each other are erased, are softened. And then we see each other as just these bundles of energy vibrating and relating at all times in millions of different ways. Let me go on a little more, and then we'll do a little practice around this. When we consider phenomena like existence in the world of people, things, ideas, objects, whatever it is, from the Buddhist standpoint, it is every item that we can name, every thought we can have, every manifested phenomena at all can be classified in one of 18 ways. And that's it. We are only one of 18 things, usually a few at a time. And here they are. And they're not, it's not like you have to memorize a list of 18. They're actually very clear and simple. And once you know it, you know it. And it starts with 6 senses. And it's the sense base, the sense faculty. So it's the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, the tangible body, the body, and the mind. 6 senses, right? So five sense organs, sense faculties, plus the mind. And each of these 6 has an object. So for the eyes, the object is form. For the ears, the object is sound. For the nose, the object is, see how easy this is? For the nose, the object is smell. For the tongue, the object is taste. For the body, the object is tangible object. And for the mind, the object is thought. Thought includes emotion, right? 6 sense faculties, 6 objects. And then remember there's 18, so there's 6 more, one for each of these things. And it's the consciousness that apprehends the object through the utility of the sense faculty. So eye consciousness understands form through the physical eye. Ear consciousness apprehends sound through the physical ears. Does this make sense? And on and on and on. Nose consciousness apprehends smell. Tongue consciousness apprehends taste. Body consciousness apprehends tangible objects. And now the last one is the big bad daddy of them all, because that's where we get in trouble. Mind consciousness apprehends thoughts. This is where we start to have stories and conceptions, conceptualizations, ideas, biases. So much of our ills happen because mind consciousness is apprehending thought in a way that serves the ego, the self, that doesn't exist. So,
Annie, could you wrap it up and say that all of this, the mind consciousness especially, is because the bottom line is, or at the bottom, or at the top, or wherever you want to put it, is fear?
oh gosh, that's a really good question. So Maria wants to know, is at the base of all of this fear? Do we engage in this trying to separate and isolate ideas and things and people out of fear? Yeah, because it's terrifying to think that like there is no ground under the self.
But does the fear come from ignorance?
Yes. Question is, does the fear come from ignorance? Everything comes from yes. Everything that is induced by and inducing suffering comes from this ignorance. Yeah, Ashley.
Could it sometimes be case by case based off of various amounts of environments and traumas that people have lived? It could be a response based off of like a trigger of someone's trauma or
Yes. Yeah, so Ashley's question is, can this also be like, it depends, depending on the person and their history and the culture and all of it, can it be triggered by trauma? And yeah, so there's personal karma and there's collective karma, societal karma. And with that is the remnants of bad acts of whole civilizations. And we carry that through this, because if you think of the idea of energy as as a flowing agent of karma, or as a flowing agent of existence, then the vibrations are being carried through that. I mean, and the study around epigenetics now is showing us that this is true. And generational trauma is a real thing. Like the most common example to show this is the children of Holocaust survivors who have this trauma that they were born, that literally was inherited through the DNA. It's real. Is that sort of what you were getting at, Ashley? Yeah. Yeah.
They've
And
done studies of Holocaust, the children of Holocaust survivors. And for some reason, even though they may have had happy parents who made an effort to be happy, they suffer from this debilitating
yep.
depression and heaviness that until they recognize it and try to heal that generational trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're interested in this topic, I highly recommend the book My Grandmother's Hands. Is that it? By Resmaa. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Resmaa Menakem. Menake. I'm gonna look it up. My Grandmother's Hands. Okay. I'm gonna put this in a link. Um, hang on. My Grandmother's Hands: Racialized Trauma and the Pathway to Mending Our something, our hearts and bodies. Here we go. Okay. I'm gonna put this in the chat, and I'll email it out also. So, uh, all right. The way to discover emptiness, or to experience it for yourself, because it can be met with a lot of skepticism, and I did fit into this boat for a long time because I didn't understand it. But we're going to experience this tonight, and this is through analytical meditation. This is the technique. So I'm going to take an object, just the strap. It's just a rolled up yoga strap, and I'm going to put it in front of me, and I'm going to look at it. And in looking at it, I'm going to start to sort of interrogate its existence. I'm going to say, what are you made of? What do you look like? How far are you from me? And then, as I just allow it to be in front of me, I'm going to start to ask the question. Remember, this is in that scheme of 18 components of existence. This is form. I can see it. So I'm going to say, at what point, strap, do you stop and do I begin? At what point does my I consciousness stop and your form take shape? And where do we meet? Where does I consciousness meet the form of the strap? Is it there, or is it here? You can do it with sound. You can say, okay, I hear traffic. At what point does ear consciousness meet the sound of the traffic outside? Where do they meet? Do they meet out there at the cars? Do they meet in here in my ears? Where does the sound stop being sound and start being ear consciousness or vibration in my body? Can I pinpoint where they connect, where one stops and the other starts? What you'll find is that you cannot. And I have tried again because I don't believe things right off the bat. I'm not a rule follower and I am a skeptic. So I have tried this numerous times over the last year and a half since I first learned this. And it's pretty cool to start to see, to pierce the illusions of separation. This is where emptiness lives. And with emptiness, we can have compassion. So if the traffic is annoying, I can start to tune into, okay, what is it really? We just heard a pop outside, like a loud engine pop. Like, is it in here? Is it out there? Is it gone now? And this is hilarious too, because you know that old saying, like if a tree falls in the forest, but no one's there to hear it, does it make it sound? From this perspective, we have an answer. No, it doesn't, because there's no ear consciousness to apprehend it as sound. So I'm going to invite you to do this. We're going to do it now with any object that's in front of you. You don't have to choose something, just whatever you want to fix your eyes on. Maria.
Understand it.
Yeah.
Could be both.
Yes. And if it's both, it's not one and not the other. Right. That's the point.
Again, that energetic.
That's exactly, yes. So she said, wouldn't it be both? And I said, yes. If it's both, it's neither. Yeah. If it's both, then I can't say that I exist outside of that sound or the strap. I don't. I mean, yeah, right. I kind of do because I can see where it hits my hand. But that's just one piece of the whole puzzle. Okay. So let's try it. Pick something to look at. And take a few breaths. So we don't want to launch right in. We always want to start with some shamatha, with some calm abiding of the breath. And then when you feel ready, start to investigate, query your object. What do I think you are? What are the names I have for you? What is your form? What do I register as your color? What do I register as your purpose? Could you serve a purpose for some other consciousness that's not mine? So you are an object. And I am apprehending you as such through my I consciousness, made possible by the sense faculty of my eyes, my sight. Where do you stop existing and my I consciousness start? Where does my I consciousness stop and you start? Is it out there at your perceived edge of your form? Is it in my eye? Is it at my eyelid or my pupil? Is it back in my brain and my optic nerve? And where do we meet? Halfway between the perceived distance? Somewhere else in a space-time continuum? Show me the point where we meet as two separate things. Do I perceive you as solid? Do I believe that you are solid? And if I believe that you are solid, then how do I answer the physicists who tell me that all you are is vibrating atoms? Far more spacious than dense or material? And where do those atoms start and stop? Are they now, or were they ever the same vibrating atoms and molecules that are currently animating my eyes and my eye consciousness? Are you receiving my exhale? Are you giving me my inhale? If I walk by you and shed a piece of my skin unknowingly onto your surface, and a gust of air lifts that up in the molecule of dust, and it gets inhaled by somebody else who walks by, am I now in them? Are we both in you? Where were you before you were here in front of my eyes? And is where you were before with you now here? Did you bring the energy of that space here? And is that in me now? Where do I stop and you begin? Where's the point that we meet? Okay, close your eyes. And now just sit without any directed thought, without any particular focus. So it's important to then integrate for a bit of time. We'll just sit for a couple minutes. Follow your breath if that feels useful. Or wander off into daydream if that feels useful. All right. So I'll invite comments or questions in a moment, but I want to share with you this little passage from something called the Heap of Jewels. It's the sutra teaching on the nature of the Dharma Dhatu. The Dhatu is the name for those 18 components. This is the metaphor of the gold. In one of his earliest discourses, the Buddha addressed his audience of monks and lay people and said, "You should examine my teachings thoroughly. Like a gold merchant looking to acquire pure gold, you should thoroughly go through the process of analyzing these teachings." The Buddha said that a substance could be examined to see if it were pure gold, first by burning it, then cutting it, then rubbing it with different cloths. Through this testing, it is possible to find out if a substance is purely gold or fake gold. In a similar way, the Buddha said, it is extremely important for you to analyze and examine my teachings, and then in the end, you can decide whether to adopt them. If there's any wisdom, you can adopt it. If there's nothing, leave it. You do not have to accept anything. The Buddha said, do not accept my teachings because they are taught by a king or a prince or taught by somebody called Buddha. But accept them if they are logical, if they are reasonable, if there is wisdom, and if there is some benefit to relieve you of your suffering. So he taught the 4 reliances. Do not rely on the person, rely on the Dharma. So it's not me, nothing to do with me. It's the wisdom that is being conveyed through me as a vehicle. Do not rely on the words, rely on the meaning. So you can call them the dhatus, the 18 dhatus, the sarva dhatu, dharma dhatu. You can call it consciousnesses and sense base. It doesn't matter. You can call it A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and what does it mean? Right. Do not rely on provisional meaning, rely on definitive meaning. So what does that mean? Provisional meaning that is provided to you, and that is provisional in terms of like it's only true here or now or then, or it only counts sometimes. That's provisional. Yeah, another way of saying conditional. It's definitive. It's something that you cannot find an exception to. And finally, do not rely on consciousness, rely on wisdom. Okay, this is huge. What does this mean? It means you can't think your way out of suffering. You can't convince yourself that you're no longer in pain, because you'll still be in pain. It's not consciousness. It's not the act of putting thoughts together to make meaning out of it. It's the wisdom of it. It's the what is left when the conceptuality fades away. It's I don't know, could you call it intuitive? Could you call it a simple, in some traditions it's simply called the ground of being or the Buddha nature, inherent goodness, a tingly sensation.
So does it go beyond faith into knowledge?
It goes beyond both. So the question is, does it go beyond faith into knowledge? It's beyond both. It's beyond. Faith is important because you have to believe that what you are cultivating is worthwhile and of value. But it's way more than knowledge. The parable of the water snake. The Buddha said, this knowledge is like a snake. If you pick it up the wrong way, i.e. like a snake by its tail, it's just going to coil around and bite you and make it worse. But if you pick it up right at its throat and hold it just enough and not too much, then it's useful. Then the tail can whip around and it won't matter. Sorry if anyone's afraid of snakes. I know people, even the mention of a snake is a problem. Over and over and over in these teachings, we find the admonition and the encouragement to try it for yourself. Try it tomorrow. Go through your day and notice something that's getting charged in your experience. And can you say, oh, well, this is just my mind consciousness apprehending this thought, and see if it still has its power. Okay, so questions or anything to share about the experience of that analytical meditation? At some point I thought maybe I was saying too much or giving you too many questions, but I wanted to keep you in it because it's easy to trail away.
Yes.
Right now.
No, I just I made them up as I went. Yeah, well, we've got the recording. I'll go to the recording and I'll pull it out and type them up. Yeah, I'll do that. To me, stay with it. I especially loved the one about like, because I was using the cork. Like, where were you before? You were a tree, right? Doesn't cork come from a tree? And like, who played under your leaves? And are they here with like that? That felt so warm in my belly to think that maybe this cork had a lovely life somewhere in the presence of laughing, playful children.
So many ideas popped up.
Yeah,
Stop, looking and start writing, but I didn't.
good.
It's very,
I know.
what stood out to me, which I wrote right afterwards, is that you asked, where do we meet?
Yeah, where do we meet?
And to me is that we meet where we are.
Mm. Mm.
And
Maria said, we meet where we are, is what came to her,
wherever that is,
wherever that is.
there's no definition, there's no story, there's no nothing. It's just emptiness.
It's emptiness. Yay! This.
There. And then you said perhaps that speck of skin
Yeah.
gets absorbed by someone,
Mm-hmm.
but because we meet where we are, there is no beginning. There is,
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
and so
There's no beginning and there is no end. Absolutely.
me to what you said earlier, where indeed there is no self. We are one already.
Yeah. Yeah. So Maria just said it took her back to the beginning of the idea of indeed there is no self. What did you say? We are
We are
one. We are one already.
and
Yeah.
we always have been.
Always have been, always will be.
That, so therein, because we are one already, because we meet where we meet,
Yeah.
therein, that is the recipient, the of compassion.
Yes.
It is the bed, it is the vehicle, it's the receptacle, it's the beautiful basin for compassion.
She's saying it's like there's the basin or the receptacle for compassion. It's the place where we meet and acknowledge that we are one. I want to just say one thing, because Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche used he coined the phrase spiritual materialism. And it's sort of a cautionary tale about not about like absolutely everything Maria just said about like we are one, and emptiness means that there's no separation and compassion and like we never weren't we always were one. We never weren't separate. We never weren't. There's no begin like we can get there is a danger of getting caught up in that as its own conception and then feeding everything through that, and then as a result abdicating our responsibility to each other to say like, oh well, we're one, so it doesn't matter what I do to you or what you've done to me. It's all good, it's all love, it's all love and light. And it's not all good. We have to take care of each other in active ways. And this is where the idea of generational trauma is important to remember what people are bringing to the table in any circumstance. We can't just write it all up into emptiness, because then we are the byproduct of that is to perpetuate harm.
We're abdicating our responsibility.
Yeah. The So the debate in Buddhism since its dawn has been to question the teachings of the Buddha, to say, well, if you're saying that everything is empty, then it's just nihilism. It's just like, well, it doesn't matter. We can run rampant. We can go on a crime rampage. We can take and hoard and indulge, and it doesn't matter because it's all empty. No. And then by the same token, the opposite danger is eternalism. So like a definitive, universal, always and forever idea. Like, I will live forever. I will, that's not true either, because impermanence. So this is why he called his teachings the middle way. Anybody else have an experience they want to share about during the analytical meditation practice?
I'll share something and then it will take us in a weird direction.
Okay. I'm going to toss you the microphone so I don't have to keep repeating. Yeah. Or do you want to come up?
I can sit in a certain, so this was,
Come
it
to
was
the
a,
camera.
it was a funny exercise to me because I'm a developmental psychologist and I study like babies and how they
Yeah.
learn and
Yeah.
like, and so all I could think about was, how babies have to figure all this out, myself and you're you, and oh, you think differently than me.
Yeah.
And like, I'm just trying to reconcile all of that.
Yeah.
And then wondering like,
Yeah.
what would Buddha say about like when you're ready to do this? Like where, or like the whole notion of when you're born are you a blank slate, tabula rasa, or are you born with ideas, concept, like, so I'm going back to these like philosophical ideas and
So interesting.
human
Emily,
development.
I see your teacher training project emerging, right?
Oh gosh, that would be an interesting
Because
one.
I have no idea.
Right. No, it's kind of fascinating to kind of put them together. And to feel like,
Good question.
like a 5-year-old, how would you like, can you start building these ideas?
I'm thinking
when
about like
children are young?
object permanence.
Yes,
Right?
yes. Or
Like-
like
like,
you can't see
we
me.
know still here, unfortunately. Unfortunately. So what I think is part of what's in there as an answer, a very partial answer, is when does suffering emerge? And when suffering emerges is the opportunity or is the time to brush up against some of this wisdom.
Mhm.
For example, a 5-year-old who fell and, skinned their knee.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Like to pick them up and to witness your calm as the caretaker, and to say, to witness being unrattled, because we know that this scrape and this blood isn't really a problem in the long run, that it's going to heal.
Yeah.
And that whatever they fell on is not against them, right? Like the playground
Intention. Yeah.
is still of value and is part of them in their lives.
Mhm.
So to learn how to navigate the world in a way that embraces all of what hurts and what helps, that we still get back on the swing.
Mhm. Yeah. That and thinking about people with disabilities
Yeah.
and sort of just their experiences and how that shapes some of this thinking.
Well, I was thinking this morning, actually, when I was walking and thinking about how I wanted to frame this, about like eye consciousness, like how does that work for somebody who is a non-seeing person?
Exactly.
So, and I think that's a powerful example, because they don't not see.
right.
Just see the way
We
others
do,
do
right,
it.
exactly. Yeah, they're taking it, they're proceeding differently.
Yeah, eye consciousness is still present, form is still present, and the physical eyes are still there.
Mhm. Right,
But
yeah,
yeah,
anyway. so
Yeah.
Those were my thoughts.
thanks. Yeah.
The other sense, taking up this flag, the other senses are filling out because you have a better sense of smell, you have a better sense of touch, of perception, of even depth.
Yeah, but even so, even without, even with the, you know, the uptake of the other senses, the eye consciousness is
It's
still
still-
present. It
yeah.
just takes a different form. Anybody else?
For me, the skin,
This,
little skin drops onto that object.
yeah,
That was
yeah.
fine.
Andrea said that kind of the mind-blowing concept of like a piece of my skin drops and then gets breathed in through dust. I mean, because that is what happens. Yeah. I mean, that's what dust is.
But
Right.
also that we come from through one lineage of mother through the mitochondria.
The powerhouse of the cell. Right.
That's the origin, as you know, scientists have proved that, you know, we all have the
Yes.
same original mitochondria that came from a mother. not
Right.
Several mothers.
Right,
A
right,
mother
right.
At some point.
Who at some point crawled out of the sea.
Wait, it doesn't
Eh,
matter.
yeah,
how, but the fact
yeah.
is that alone connects us.
Mhm,
You know,
mhm,
men and women,
mhm.
all of us, all creatures connects us. So that's pretty mind blowing.
Yeah. Did anybody, Ashley, yeah. Yes.
Is there any literature or video or something that we can watch or read that can give more detail about the no self? Because
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
it grasp it, the no beginning, no ending, and then
Yeah.
everything really isn't there. But then for me, I'm like, but isn't it really that it is? So I just want to know a bit more about it and spend more time with it.
Yeah. So I'm going to give some thought to that. So Ashley's question is like, where can we read more about the concept of no self? And it's always going to be tied with the idea of impermanence and suffering from attachment. So it's going to be with those three, the marks of existence. I got to give some thought to that. That's a hard one because, yes, I'll get back to you. There's so much. Yeah,
Annie, isn't it both?
both what?
Where does it start? Where does it begin? But yet it always is.
No, yeah, that part I get, but I just want
But
to
I'm
know
saying-
more about it.
Right, but I'm saying, isn't it the same interchange?
It is. Yeah, yeah.
Fully grasp it.
Anybody out there want to ask or ask or answer
I'll just say,
or share?
I'll admit this is just too, I can't grasp any of this at all. It's too
Come
esoteric.
on, Kathleen.
There's too much, it's, I can't get it. It's too, because there's too much
So-
reality, there's too much there's practical stuff. I can't. I mean, maybe I just need time to process it all, but it's really hard for me to grasp this concept. And
So all you have to do, all anybody has to do at the very base of it, right, is to sit for a minute, 1 minute, to sit and to allow experience to arise and then watch it fall away. That is the crux of all of this. And if we can get
in tune with a rhythm that rides a wave of of um of arising and falling, a tide that ebbs and flows. If we can tune into that rhythm of give and take, of up and down, of this and that, then we're more than halfway there, because that's what this is. It's the antidote to a belief in a stable and constant um presence of fill in the blank.
I get the impermanence, I get the suffering and the causes of suffering. The separate self, the gazing, that the exercise we just did was extremely challenging. It was too far out for me. I'm not saying it's wrong, and I don't, I get
Yeah.
I get
Yeah,
that with the separate
that's
self, I'm
fair.
struggling with that big time.
That's fair. And yeah, no need to struggle. Test it in different ways. And it might be like easier to access from the ear consciousness. And it might be it, or from, smell or taste, or any of them. Yeah. Anybody else? Anyone else struggling? Now that Katha has come clean? Cressy. Yeah. That's all right. That's all right. It's it, on a practical sense, I think the usefulness of this again is to train in an awareness of coming and going, and a softening of our sharp edges. I mean, yeah. What did I just say? A softening of our sharp edges is that what I said? It's what I meant to say. In my head, I was like, not a sharpening of your soft edges, a softening of your sharp edges. Yeah. Yeah, Nivi.
Like to also like meditate on the water cycle. And
On what?
water
On the water cycle. Yeah.
probably something from the Himalayas in this cup.
Yes, the water. Oh my gosh. Oh, I just got chills. Yeah. So she said like water outside, water inside, and she said there's probably like water from the Himalayas in this cup. Probably. I hope so. That would be cool. Okay. Oh, it's 9:04.
10's a 10, right?
Yeah. Night. Okay, let's just take a deep breath together. And exhale everything out. Extend some quiet gratitude to each other for sharing this time, for engaging in this content. May it be of benefit to ourselves, to others, to the world. Thank you so much. A wonderful evening. I'll see you all next week.
Thanks. Fantastic.